Hi, this is Lou Pulsfer to talk about the big picture in learning game design. Not any nuts and bolts, but the big picture. The first thing I need to tell you is don't underestimate the task. Contemporaries often drastically underestimate how hard it is to do some discipline or other, to become proficient at something, because the activity and the effort isn't obvious. A lot of it is in the mind. Programming, for example. Game design is another of these. It's much more than you might think involved in the discipline. Moreover, being an expert game player doesn't help you at all. Game design is a different discipline with different requirements. So what's needed? Well, it's not much different from becoming successful in anything else. To quote Henry Ward Beecher, to become an able and successful man in any profession, three things are necessary: nature, study, and practice. Now, what's he mean by nature? He means talent. In most cases, game designers are born, more or less, with the aptitude and the inclination. For example, I've designed games since I reached double digits in age, if not earlier. But, as in most other creative endeavors, sometimes the talent doesn't really manifest or isn't used until later in life. Now, I don't know any game designer examples of this, but I can suggest a novelist, Dave Duncan, who didn't become a novelist until he was well into middle age, yet he's had over 50 books published, and the ones that I've read have been quite good. What about study and practice? Well, there's more or less three ways that you can go about this. You can learn through the school of hard knocks, which is just what it says, experiencing all the failures. It's not very efficient. Or you can think ahead and recognize where you might go wrong and try to avoid it. That, to me, is a smarter way to do it, but you're still going to have to go through some hard knocks. Or you can rely on information that already exists about how to avoid many pitfalls. Now, usually it's a combination of all three, but where will your emphasis be? So, here I have a list, more or less in order of priority, which is different from how I normally do these lists, of what you need to do to help you become a game designer. First of all, you need to know games. Now, I'm not saying you have to play a lot of games right now or in the future, but you need to have played a lot in the past. In practice, I think you can learn about games more efficiently in ways other than by playing. I've known so many people who played a game once and thought they understood it, and they didn't. You have to play a game several times. That's why when people review a game, they need to play it several times. So what can you do? You can read the rules if it's a tabletop game. You can read and watch reviews. You can watch games being played, which is particularly easy with all the videos on YouTube and Twitch and so on. And maybe most important, you can talk with people who've played the games, because they've experienced it and you can take advantage of their experience in a relatively short time by asking them smart questions. On the other hand, if you're the sort of person who needs to beat your head on the wall to know that it hurts, then you'll have to play lots of games. Second, you've got to do it. You have got to design games. It's not enough to think about designing games. It's not enough to talk about designing games. It's not enough to dream about designing games. You've got to do it. But even then, if you don't learn some of the theory, unfortunately, you'll just be throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. So you need some of the theory to go along with practice, otherwise you won't be practicing the right things. And much of the rest of what I'm going to talk about is how you can learn that theory. There's lots of stuff in writing that can help. Articles in magazines or compendium books or, on the web. Blog posts. Books. Now, a book is a much more concentrated and, I hope, a deeper form of writing than blog posts and articles. And I can speak from experience, because I've blogged for 11 or 12 years, and I've also written a book. Now, the book included some of the material that was in the blog, but it was better in the book. Why? Because the book provided a focus and a direction that you don't get with shorter writing. And of course, I revised what was originally in the blog. And that comes into play when you have one or two persons writing the book. If you have a bunch of people writing disparate contributions to a book, then it's more like blog posts or articles. It loses that more concentrated form of information and knowledge that a good book should give you. There are lots of videos that can help. My game design channel on YouTube, over 150 videos. Extra Credits is very good. There's lots more that are free. Now, I've also created online audiovisual classes that are not free but are priced $20 to $50. In general, though, there's far more to help game designers in writing than in video audio, because people have been writing books about game design for decades, and the video audio stuff is relatively recent. There are courses you can take, although this is often going to cost you money. There are seated courses, there are online courses, some are free, most are not. MOOCs, massively open online courses, are usually free. Sometimes they're videos from a university course, sometimes somebody else makes videos, sometimes they're even text. The topics frequently are pretty elementary for rank beginners. Then you have udemy.com and other online sources like skillshare.com, where there are lots of courses, including mine. Most of the courses that say game design online are actually about game production and not game design. But game design is a sexy term, and so they call it game design even when it isn't. We have colleges and universities, more than 500, that are offering degrees in game production. Generally, the community colleges are much less expensive. The universities tend to be very expensive, typically 4 figures per course or more, and often these are degree courses. Again, many are called game design because it's a sexy term, even though they're mostly about game development, which is to say programming, art, sound, and so forth, that's needed to create the software to make a video game. Also, you need to watch out. Many degrees are set up to attract students to programming at schools where programming enrollment is way down. And there are schools that are simply preying on the dreams of young people and providing very expensive courses that aren't even real college degrees, are not accredited properly, and often these are schools that are trying to make a profit. In many schools, whether they're for-profit or not, the instructors know little about game design. They've not done it. They've done programming or they've done art. There are lots of talks and seminars and workshops. Most video game conferences are all about making video games. They have several tracks of talks, usually including one or more related to game design. A few large tabletop conventions have talks, most don't. Gen Con in Indianapolis in the summer has the most that I know of, and I give like 4 there every year. Talk with and listen to people who are game designers in person. These people have suffered the school of hard knocks or have learned in other ways, and they can pass on their experience. You can run into them at conventions of any size, at any game meeting if you're lucky. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a game designers guild or club where you live. For example, I know of such groups in Raleigh, North Carolina, and in the wintertime in Gainesville, Florida. And the last thing on the list is playing games, the lowest priority. Because if you already know games, you need to design games, not play games. The exception there is you need to play your own games solo, even if they're tabletop games, even if it's a game for 6 players. You've got to play it solo to get rid of the worst problems before you inflict it on somebody else. But I know several designers who would design a lot more games if they didn't let game playing get in the way. They like to play games too much. and so it interferes with their design. Keep in mind always, playing games is a quite different animal from designing games. You need to know games well enough to design games, but playing lots and lots more games won't make you a better designer generally. Now, don't join the millions of people who think game design is easy and that because they play games well, they'll design well. It's not true. It's just not the way it is. Thanks for listening.